This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 46. Today's episode is sponsored by Nicole Burgess, Empowerment Mentor. She helps the high-achieving, introverted, and sensitive female entrepreneur end the overwhelm and stressed out cycle, create more balance between her work and personal life, so she can have deeper connections not only with her partner, her children, but herself. To sign up for my free online workshop on the 5-step strategy my clients use to end overwhelm, get rid of guilt, and increase connection to their partner as a high-achieving and highly sensitive woman, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. I am so excited about this upcoming conversation today. I have Dr. Tari Mack on, and she is a clinical psychologist, a relationship coach, a speaker, and an author. Tari has spent many years working with amazing, beautiful humans who have had the courage to be vulnerable and tell the truth about who they are. She's passionate about helping others lead more conscious, accountable, and joyful lives while learning to harness the power of the universe along the way. Tari resides in Chicago, Illinois, and is a super mom to 2 adorable and hilarious daughters, and enjoys yoga, writing, laughing, and spending time with her amazing friends and family. Tari has also recently released a brand new book called Every Relationship is a Test. Master your lessons and finally get the love you deserve. Well, Tari, I am so excited to have a conversation with you today about some of the information in your book and sharing it with all the listeners today.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here talking with you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, before we kind of dive into some of the topics, share a little bit about really what got you into this path of going from really clinical psychology into becoming a relationship coach.
Sure. So I would say over the last 6 years, probably 6 years ago, I started to get this feeling, this pull towards something different that I was supposed to be doing. And I could not figure out what it was. And it wouldn't go away. And every year I kind of checked in with myself. I would talk with friends. I love what I do. I love being a clinical psychologist, but there's something else. And it was about 2 years ago, I was talking with another therapist friend of mine, and I was trying to explain to her what I knew about this pull. And after listening to me, she suggested that I start a blog. And at the time, I didn't know anything about blogs. I hadn't read any. So she gave me some examples. And so I started a blog the next week called The Path of Joy. And the purpose of that blog was really to start to share everything I had learned in the last 15 years, sitting with, beautiful humans who had let me into their lives. And once I started writing, I couldn't stop. And what I found is that what I really wanted to be writing about was relationships and love and dating, because that had been a lot of the work that I'd been doing over the years, particularly with women, not just women, but a lot of it had been with women. And so it's kind of evolved from there. After I started the blog, I wrote to Psychology Today and asked if I could write something for them. And they said they only consider people who had written a book. So I think that day I decided, yeah, I'm going to write a book. And I realized I already had a book written in me. I just had to let it out. And so that's kind of been the process over the last year and a half, is getting this book actually out in the world. And it's really exciting that it's happened.
Well, it is exciting. And what I just love what you shared too was really listening to that inner voice that was calling you. You were really tapped into your inner knowing. It's okay, universe is saying I've got something else going on and I'm not too sure what it is, but I'm just following that nudging that is going on.
Yes. And I mean, what I've found in my own life and in my work with clients, which I'm sure has been the same for you, is that if you follow that, even if you don't know exactly how you're going to follow it or what the path will look like, every time we follow our passion, our joy, what we feel pulled to, the path keeps unfolding for us.
Yes.
It's so amazing. And it's so cool to see that happening, not only for ourselves, but for other people.
Right. And it is so much fun too, because I often find them, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not the path. It's like a door will kind of slam shut in my face. I'm like, oh, okay. I need to pivot. Okay. Got it.
Right. Right.
Love it. Well,
Yeah.
there's a chapter in your book that you and I were kind of talking about briefly before I started to record this. And it was something I had actually seen from a post you had done, and was talking about women really kind of picking men or partners that really just are not in alignment with who they are. And I know you talked about kind of unconscious attraction, and there's like two kinds, and you share that in your book. Would you mind kind of talking a little bit more about that?
Sure, of course. So what I found in my work with women, so many times a woman will come in and start talking about a man she's met or somebody that she's in a relationship with. And I say man just because the book is written for women who date men. However, of course, I honor and celebrate all kinds of relationships. And a lot of these concepts can be universal to same-sex relationships. But in particular, there tends to be a power differential in relationships between women and men. So I kind of speak to that a lot. And in particular, even though we say we want a partner who, is all the great qualities, is honest, is reliable, is mature, can communicate, will treat us well, what I found is that as women, we often choose partners who are not those things. And so I really, looked into that. And what I've discovered is there are two different kinds of unconscious attraction. The first kind says that we are attracted to partners who reinforce how we feel about ourselves. So I'll say that one more time.
Yes.
We are attracted to partners who reinforce how we feel about ourselves. So depending on our level of self-esteem, depending on how much we love ourselves and value ourselves, we will pick somebody who treats us in that same way. So if we feel really good about ourselves and know our worth, we will be attracted to partners who really see our worth too and know that we are a gift and want to treat us well and want to do the hard work with us. But conversely, if we struggle with self-esteem, if we struggle with seeing our own value, then we will choose partners who reinforce that. Those kinds of relationships will feel like home to us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. I'm over here nodding my head going, oh my gosh, this is, so powerful. I see this pattern often. Yes.
Yes. So that is the first kind of unconscious attraction. And the healing there, even though it sounds simple, is not easy. It's a process, is really to work on your relationship with yourself. It's really tuning into, the negative scripts you have toward yourself, self-criticism, self-loathing, and learning how to feed yourself loving and kind words and thoughts, learning how to be compassionate and forgiving with yourself, learning how to take good care of yourself. And when you do that, you start to shift and your attraction starts to shift. You will no longer want to be around people who don't treat you well because you've changed your relationship with yourself. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And it's fascinating when some women that I have worked with in the past where we're working not necessarily on relationships with others, but more about themselves and that negative self-talk where it's just so critical and harsh on themselves. Like you're saying, it's like now it's getting, compassionate, getting curious and shifting that so that you can truly attract healthier people into your life.
Totally. And if you're not at the point yet, sometimes it's hard for women to begin to say kind things to themselves. So if you can start with just noticing when you're being critical and kind of quieting that voice, that is the first step. And that, it's an important step. And then slowly, maybe you can add in the kindness and compassion as you go along.
Yeah. And I know you've done a lot of mindfulness work over the years too for yourself and with your clients. And I know that you bring so much of that you have brought that into your work. And this is a piece of it, of just all of us more mindful about what is that chatter we have going on in our head. And like you said, rewriting those scripts, because our future hasn't happened yet, but we need to stop saying the same scripts over and over and over, because all we're going to get is the same results if we do.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really the point of the book. When I say every relationship is a test, it's like every partner we meet, every relationship we potentially enter into is an opportunity to do something different. And so the book will help you identify what are your growth areas? What mistakes do you keep making without knowing it? And another area that a lot of people struggle with is the unconscious attraction number 2. So the second kind of unconscious attraction is that we choose partners who put us in the same roles and create the same patterns as we had with our early caregivers and with our families in childhood. So, what does that mean?
About that.
So, as you know, Nicole, this is a basic tenet of psychology that we recreate patterns from the past. We continue to try to get our unmet needs met in adulthood using old strategies that are outdated. So what that means is let's say, for instance, as an example, that we had an emotionally unavailable dad. Let's say we had a dad who really wasn't in touch with his own feelings. He didn't really have the language of feelings. Maybe he wasn't around much, or he was around, but he was never really attuned to how we were feeling. So we will likely feel attracted and chemistry with men who are also like that, who put us in that role of really having to work to try to get at a man's feelings. What is he feeling? How does he feel about me? And put us in that role of having to do most of the emotional work in the relationship. And because that feels like home, that to us feels like love. But the problem with that is that we don't get our needs met. We're spending so much time trying to get inside the heart and mind and soul of this guy that we think we love, that we're forgetting about what we need. And that's a very common pattern that I've seen women play out. It's one that I played out for years and years, and that's why I chose it as an example. So, but I mean, there's all different kinds of patterns and unconscious attraction that can play out. But basically, whatever role you were in your family, or whatever strategies you used as a kid, you will choose partners that recreate those for you. And typically the problem is you're going to be frustrated because you're not going to get what you need. And if you don't make the unconscious conscious, if you don't recognize, okay, even though I say I want this kind of partner, I tend to always choose this kind of partner, then you will keep doing that. But once you realize what your pattern is, you can change it. And that's a lot of the work that I do with people, is helping them figure out what their unconscious attraction is so they can heal it and shift it.
Beautiful. Yeah. I know in some of the previous podcasts, I have one specifically on like self-reflection and contemplation. This is really what you're talking about, is you do need to slow down and go within and just get curious, like what we've been saying, to see like, wow, so I've picked this person again, and yet they look different. Their name may be different, or maybe their name isn't different. And yet you're just like, oh, what am I doing? It's like you're saying, it's like, well, I keep picking my dad over and over. And sometimes you may even pick your mom in these relationships if you're really craving something from this other person that you didn't get growing up. Yeah,
totally. And the thing is, like, if we're not conscious of that, it's like all our old stuff gets activated when we meet somebody like that, and we feel like it's chemistry and attraction.
Yeah.
When in reality, there's something underneath that.
Yeah. Well, I just, even the noise that you made to me, if you're in touch with not just your head all the time, but more your body level, right? That oftentimes there's that internal warning system that can go off. And I know sometimes for women, that inner warning, they dismiss it. Like their guts telling them, this is not okay, because they're like, yeah, but I was told growing up that I, don't pay attention to my intuition, or don't do this over here. So they've often, as they've grown up, they've continued to ignore it. And what we're talking about is paying attention to it as well. And looking at it.
Yes. If you are dating somebody and your intuition is telling you something is off, something is wrong, you're feeling anxious, you need to pay attention to that because your intuition will never steer you wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I love really what you're talking about in your book too, that it really is about mastering your love lessons and healing those old wounds in a way that you do not continue to repeat them. Because if you're wanting a deep and fulfilling, loving relationship, you've got to do your own work in order to do that. And
exactly.
yeah. And I love how you talk too within your book, you're talking about really bringing in the universe, right? Because the universe helps kind of guide you, like we were talking about earlier, even in your path, that it's like the universe does have your back. And if you're open to listening to, whether you call it universe, spirit, higher power, whatever name you give that, you start to see like, oh, people are crossing my path that need to be, and that can help me grow and guide me in the place that, maybe I need to understand myself better in. So
exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, once you start doing this work, like if you start reading the book or you start working on identifying your relationship patterns, the universe gets to work on your behalf. So you will notice that there will be lots and lots of growth opportunities, which sometimes suck, but they can also be really exciting for you to recognize like these choice points where you could totally do the same thing you always do, whether it's like rushing into a relationship really quickly, attaching too quickly, not speaking up and setting boundaries, or if you've identified where your work is, you can lean into the discomfort of doing your work and doing things differently and change the course of your relationship. And for some women, the work is saying no to the wrong person and the wrong relationship to hold space for the right person. And so every time you pass a test or learn a lesson, the universe is paying attention and you move forward. Like the more you heal, the more evolved people you advance toward.
I love it. And I love that how you keep phrasing it. And what I've said too on the podcast and even with my own clients, it's like lean into the discomfort because there are opportunities that are coming your way that you have no idea what they are yet. But if you continue to run away from, avoid, lean back from, or want to like, I can't do this, it's like you prevent yourself from really having what you are really craving and calling to you.
Yes. And I always tell all my clients, but especially women, because it seems to resonate with them a lot, that there are so many men, good men, waiting further along down your path, that you have to do the work to get there.
Yep.
And a lot of women stay in the wrong relationship where they're feeling unfulfilled at best, or, even like in an emotionally toxic or abusive relationship at worst, because they're afraid of being alone. They're afraid of never finding somebody else, but there is always another relationship. There is always another man. There's always another partner. It's just how it works. So sometimes it's leaning into that fear of being with yourself for a while and trusting that will lead to love.
Yeah. And what was popping up in my head as you were saying, it's those first recognizing those are your fear thoughts. And just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. Second, it is about changing those scripts. So the more that you focus on, oh, I don't want to be alone. Oh, I can't survive by myself. I can't do this by myself. The can'ts, the won'ts, the this and that. You continue to make that happen. And then 3, when it's really being able to say it's okay to feel the temporary discomfort because it's not a forever, that there is someone else down that path. That may not be tomorrow. It may not be the next week, but they're coming because you are attracting that because you're truly doing the work that you need to do to bring them along.
Yes, exactly. And it's just so fun and exciting when I'm working with women and we're really zoned in on what their particular work is, what their tests look like. Every week they come in and we're like, oh God, you are never going to believe like what my test looked like this week. And I passed it. And then we see how they get rewarded. It's so fun. Once you decode all of that, life gets a lot more, gets a lot easier because your awareness is higher, and it also gets more fun because you can kind of see what's happening.
Well, and I love how you're even framing it. It's like decoding this message that has been there all along, but you've not been aware of it. And now you're like, oh my gosh, Tari, look at this. This is what it is.
Right.
so empowering to those who are working with you, because it's like once they are open to seeing the pattern and wanting to do something different, they now have that ability to do it. And you're there to help guide them along, but also hold them accountable so that they don't fall back into, because that's our fear, right? The fear literally wants to keep you stuck, and the ego does too. Like, no, we know this comfort zone, man. Even if it's miserable, we know that.
Yes. Yes. Totally. Totally.
Yeah. And you're like, no, it's okay. Keep taking that small step forward. It's all good. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, it's like women realize they have the power.
Yeah.
They have the power to choose what relationships they enter into, stay in. They have the power to choose a partner who will support them. And if you're doing your work, then you watch how a partner responds to that. If you're learning how to be more assertive and ask for your needs to be met, then if the person you're dating really celebrates that with you, or, is supportive of that, then you should continue in that relationship. If they don't, then you should not. So it becomes very simple to see whether or not you should stay with somebody or not, or if there's somebody you should date or not.
Yeah. And what you were talking about earlier too, when you're really focused on that other person, I often tell clients, when we talk about relationship stuff in general, whether it's at work or in their personal life, I'm like, are you on your side of the sidewalk, your path, or are you on theirs?
Yes.
I'm like, oh,
yes.
I'm kind of on theirs. I'm like, yeah, let's get back over onto your side.
Yeah. I use that analogy too. I say your side of the street. So
yes,
same
right,
thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because it is so much when women focus on, and again, we're really trained well, I think, to be these caregivers and to really nurture other people. Yet if we forget our own needs, like you've been talking about, you can't be all of you, and you can't really put your best self out there and stay very grounded in yourself. Whereas if, when you do those things, you allow that person, when you assert yourself or set a boundary, you allow them to be themselves. And then you just get the data back, how that worked, how it didn't work, what do you want to do moving forward. It's just a beautiful dance that you allow to happen in the relationship.
Yes. And I always say a relationship cannot be healthier than the unhealthiest member.
Beautiful. Say more.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that you aren't the one bringing your relationship down. You want to make sure that you're feeding yourself, you're nourishing yourself, you're setting healthy boundaries, that you are taking good care of yourself. And you have to trust that your partner will do that as well. Mm-hmm. And if you tend to choose partners who don't kind of hold up their end of the relationship, if they can't communicate, if they're not honest, if they don't respect your boundaries or they don't have boundaries, then, that's not work you can do. The best you can do is communicate what you see, how you feel, and trust that they will do the work needed. And if they don't, you're probably going to have to move on. You should not be doing all of the work of a relationship. You do your part, and you leave the other part to your partner, to make sure they're healthy.
And we know that it's not typically, it's a 50-50 all the time. Sometimes you're doing 60-40, that sort of stuff. But what you're saying is like, there needs to be some sort of, what do I want to say, kind of equalness in a way between who's doing the work and who's not.
Yeah. And each of you is ultimately responsible for yourselves.
Yes.
So each of you all the time has to be taking good care of yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And supporting each other in doing that. That means sometimes if you say, hey, I need a night to myself, or I need a week to myself, that, your partner, even if they feel disappointed or sad, that they can support you in that, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. That a healthy partner will want you to take good care of yourself, even if it means they don't get what they need temporarily.
That word temporarily, it's not a forever. But they get it. It's like, I know you need to have that downtime because, your stress level has been up and you need to just go rejuvenate for a little bit. It doesn't mean that you're abandoning me or you're not loving me in this moment. It's like, I can love you as you go rejuvenate, and then we'll act after.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Give and take within that flow of the relationship.
Yes. And so you just have to make sure that you are healthy enough. If you have fears about that, if you have like old abandonment fears, that you can self-soothe, so that you can hold up your end of that healthy dynamic of give and take.
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so for some women, that's hard to do. And so they have healing to do there.
Right. And what we're also really talking about too, when it's asserting yourself or setting those boundaries, it's being able to step into that vulnerability and
Oh my
say,
gosh.
like if you truly are getting triggered or you're struggling with something because you're like, oh my gosh, it just pushed a button for me. Just even being able to acknowledge that can help your partner understand, here's where you
Yes.
are. And you're like, I need to work through this, or maybe it's even talking through that. And then again,
Yes.
seeing kind of how they respond to that, or do they react to it, which is usually kind of a red flag often.
Exactly. Yes.
But,
There's a chapter in the book called Recognize Red Flags and Run. And one of them is someone who like tends to get defensive if you share your feelings, or like minimizes or tries to convince you you're wrong when you share your feelings.
Mhm.
Those things typically aren't going to change.
Yeah.
Unless your partner really recognizes them and wants to do the active work to change that.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
I love this. Oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, there's so many different avenues we can go down.
So much. I know.
But I love the main message here is really bringing this unconscious material to the consciousness so that women can, as you're saying, be more empowered in their choices that they are making, in their love relationships that they want in their life and their future, that they have the ability to make really healthy decisions and not be stuck in something that is not working for them or is truly unhealthy, that they have options to make a change.
Totally. And, the women that I work with have been repeating the same relationship patterns over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until we work together and we make the unconscious conscious that they understand the role they're playing. And that's where your power is.
And I appreciate that reminder too. It's like there is a role that they're playing. And it's like once they figure that out and, go, oh yeah, that's on my side of the street. Okay, got it. Let me do that differently. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we kind of, wrap up here, I want to pivot just a second. And would you mind sharing just a couple things with our listeners here? Like, what are some of the things that you have done for yourself that really nurture you so that you can be, this loving partner, this loving mom, this business owner? What are some of the things that you do for yourself to keep you rejuvenated and nourished?
Sure. Well, the first thing is definitely yoga and exercise. So for me, that's a big part of my well-being, mental health, spirituality, is taking time for myself to move my body. It makes me feel happy and centered and joyful. So I make sure to do that, 2 to 3 times a week. And I think in general, especially being a mom, having healthy boundaries, letting my daughters know, my daughters are 6.5 and 4, but helping them understand that I'm a person too.
Yes.
So sometimes, mommy isn't available to meet all of their needs. Sometimes, if I'm getting stressed out, I will let them know I'm starting to get kind of frustrated or stressed out. So I need a few moments or, I need a half an hour to do this, and we're all going to do kind of our own thing. But I think for me, really one of my life work has been learning how to set healthy boundaries and take care of myself.
Yeah.
And that makes me, a better friend, a better daughter, a better mother, a better partner. And being in nature, I think, is the third one for me. Like nature just soothes me.
Yes. I know for many of the highly sensitive people that are listening to this, like nature is one of those key things. Everybody's like, oh yeah, it's like you just go out and you can just feel all tension melt off of your body.
Yes, for sure.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, Tari, I just want to say thank you so much for being on. And ladies, Tari has the top 5 mistakes we make in dating and relationships on her website. It's called drtarimack.com, and it's drtarimack.com. And again, I'll have that on my show notes, and you can go out to her website and then get that free top 5 mistakes we make in dating and relationships, and find out more about her book as well. And I will have the links again on the show notes for you to go out and get. So Tari, thank you so much for sharing such valuable wisdom to all my lady listeners. And if they're in relationships that maybe they need, be like, oh, I need to go back and see where I'm at on my side of the streets and start to shift some of these things.
Definitely. I love talking about this stuff. My goal is to help all of us women support each other and heal each other and really empower each other to be the kind of partners we want to be in relationships and create the kind of love we deserve. So I'm really happy to be here.
And I love it because that's really my goal for the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, is for women to really, wrap around one another and support one another versus kind of, putting one another down. So you were totally in alignment.
Awesome.
With this,
we need to get t-shirts.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much again for being on and for doing what you're doing. And I know you've got intentions to, do more presentations and speaking events. So, people, if you sign up for her email list, you will be able to stay up to date with what she's doing and where she's at.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
To sign up for my free online workshop on the 5-step strategy my clients use to end overwhelm, get rid of guilt, and increase connection to their partner as a high-achieving and highly sensitive woman, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm.